Lindsay slammed the bill down on the coffee table. You know what one 200-odd buys these days, Dad? Not dignity. Her voice sliced through the living room like a snow shovel scraping cement. The thin sheet of paper fluttered against a pile of overdue envelopes, electric gas water, and settled with a kind of quiet accusation. Robert Callahan, known to most people as Bob, sat silently in his usual chair, a brown recliner with a permanent lean and a squeaky armrest. The leather was cracked and faded, much like Bob himself, worn from years of use, and lately less welcome. Across from him, Travis sprawled across the couch, one socked foot resting on a throw pillow. "She's not wrong, Bob," he said, without looking up from the game show buzzing on TV. "That pension doesn't even cover groceries anymore." Bob folded his hands over his stomach, eyes still on the muted images flashing across the screen. He had long learned that speaking too soon or too often only made things worse. But silence, too, came with a cost. Lindsay kept pacing. $300 for electricity, $250 for gas, and you think tossing in a couple of 20s every week makes you some kind of saint? "I never said that," Bob replied evenly, eyes still on the TV, though he hadn't absorbed a single thing since Wheel of Fortune began. "No," Lindsay snapped, "but you act like it, like we should be grateful you're here, like this is doing us a favor." He looked up slowly. "You asked me to move in." "That was 3 years ago," she shot back instantly. "Before inflation, before Travis lost his job, before we were drowning in bills." Travis finally turned his head, the remote slipping off his lap. "I've been looking, Bob. You know that. It's not easy finding something decent when you're over 40 and don't want to work for minimum wage." Bob exhaled long and slow. "And I worked 37 years at the GM plant. Didn't matter if it rained, snowed, or I had a fever. I showed up." Lindsay stopped mid-step. "Well, congratulations. Gold star. But the world's changed since then. Your little pension doesn't stretch like it used to. And this—" She gestured broadly to the living room. "The house, her life, this isn't working." The silence that followed felt like wet cement drying around his ankles. Bob looked around the room. It was filled with signs of his presence, the framed photo of Margaret from their 25th anniversary. The knit blanket she made before her chemo treatments stole her strength, the ceramic mug from the Ford Museum he still used every morning. And yet somehow, he didn't belong here. "I pay what I can," he said finally. "That's just it, Dad," Lindsay said. "You can't anymore, and we can't keep pretending you can." Bob wanted to argue. He wanted to remind her of the house he sold, the home on Elm Street where Lindsay grew up, where Margaret planted tulips every spring, where they hosted Thanksgiving dinners with real napkins and 2 dry turkey. He wanted to say, "I gave you $150,000 for this house, and you promised I'd always have a home." Instead, he said nothing. Travis stood up, stretched, and made a show of yawning. "Maybe it's time you found somewhere else to stay. I mean, they have those senior living places with bingo and shuffleboard, right?" Bob blinked. "You want me to move out? I want us to breathe," Lindsay said, voice soft but firm. "This isn't sustainable." Bob stood slowly. His knees ached. They always did when the temperature dropped. "I'll think about it," he said. Lindsay scoffed. "You'll think about it? Great." She turned away, rifling through her purse, the sounds of crumpled receipts and jingling keys filling the room like static. She pulled out a $5 bill, old and worn, and held it toward him like a receipt for lost patience. "Here, take this. Buy a lottery ticket or something. Maybe you'll get lucky and finally be useful." The words landed heavier than the bill in his hand. Bob didn't react. He folded the money neatly and tucked it into his shirt pocket. "Thank you." The thank you stopped her short just for a second. Maybe she expected resistance, or a fight, or at least a little self-pity. "Well, Casey's still sells those scratch-offs," she muttered. Travis chuckled. "Don't get the dollar ones. Go big or go home." "Maybe he should go home," Lindsay said, quieter now. Bob moved toward the coat rack by the door. It was early evening, but already the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the floorboards. Outside, the sky was steel gray, and the wind had begun to howl through the trees. He slid on his heavy coat, one of the few things he still owned from his old life, and wrapped a scarf around his neck. He took his time, fingers deliberate, movements calm. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't need to. As he stepped onto the porch, the cold air hit him like truth. The kind of cold that clarified everything. Behind him, the muffled voices of Lindsay and Travis continued arguing now about dinner, or money, or something equally unimportant. Bob walked down the steps and onto the sidewalk, $5 in his pocket, the air sharp in his lungs. He didn't know where the walk would take him just yet, but he knew it would start with one small, humbling purchase. He folded the bill slowly and walked to the coat rack. No one asked where he was going. The bell over Casey's door jingled and Bob stepped into the warm light like a man entering a confessional. The warmth was a welcome contrast to the sharp wind gnawing at the back of his neck just moments before. Outside, Michigan's November chill was settling deep into the bones of Harrison, the kind of cold that didn't ask permission. Casey's general store was quiet at that hour. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A teenage girl in a varsity jacket was thumbing through candy bars near the register. A man in a dusty Carhartt coat filled his styrofoam cup with burnt coffee from the self-serve pot in the back. They nodded at Bob like they had 1,000 times before, but tonight he felt oddly separate from them all. Ramesh, the night cashier, stood behind the counter flipping through a local paper. "Evening, Mr. Callahan," he said with a familiar smile. "You're braving the freeze for your peanut clusters again." Bob offered a small smile. "Not tonight, Ramesh." Ramesh raised an eyebrow. "Powerball, then?" Bob reached into his coat pocket and slowly unfolded the $5 bill. 3 tickets. Ramesh tilted his head. 3 big spender. Bob fished into his other pocket and pulled out a crumpled 10. "This one's mine." The 5A donation from someone with strong opinions. Ramesh grinned. "Gotcha. How do you want them split?" Bob looked at the machine behind the counter, then at the pad where names could be printed. 1 ticket, $5, put Lindsay Callahan. Other 2, Robert Callahan. Ramesh typed it in casual as ever. "Quick picks," Bob nodded. "Let fate decide." He watched as the printer spat out the slips one after another with mechanical indifference. 3 slim chances to change a life or confirm everything wrong with it. He folded them gently and slipped them into his wallet behind the faded photo of Margaret from 1989, standing in front of the old GM plant with a lunchbox and lipstick on. "Feeling lucky today, Mr. Callahan?" Ramesh asked as he rang up the total. Bob hesitated. "Not lucky, just curious." Ramesh handed him the change. "Well, good luck to all the Callahans then." Bob offered a tight smile. Not all of them. He stepped back into the cold. The wind was picking up sweeping loose leaves across the cracked parking lot. As he walked, he passed the elementary school where Lindsay once performed in a Thanksgiving play dressed as a very serious turkey. He passed the bench outside O'Leary's diner where Margaret once drank hot cider and called him her stubborn oak. His pace was slow but steady, like someone walking through the chapters of a book only he could read. Every corner held a memory. Every flickering street lamp carried a weight. And yet for the first time in months, Bob didn't feel heavy. He felt hollowed out, but in the way a field feels after harvest, empty but ready. He reached the edge of the neighborhood and paused under the dim orange glow of a lamppost. He pulled out the wallet again, stared at the 3 slips tucked neatly inside. The one with Lindsay's name paid for by her own dismissiveness. 2 with his paid for by what little he had left. Was it petty? Maybe. But he wasn't after revenge. He just wanted to see something change. Back at the house, the windows glowed with television light. Shadows moved behind the curtains, figures pacing, talking, arguing, living. A home he helped pay for, filled with people who had already decided he was a burden. Bob let out a long breath, his hand still on the wallet. He remembered the day he sold the house on Elm Street. Lindsay cried at first tears of joy, she claimed. "It's a fresh start, Dad," she'd said. "We'll be together, like a team." Margaret had just passed and Bob was adrift, eager to anchor himself somewhere. So he handed over the money, packed up the photo albums, and stepped into their guest room like a ghost moving into someone else's life. The gratitude didn't last. Nothing ever does if you let people forget what you gave them. He put the wallet away and kept walking. The corner store, the middle school, the faded mural of Harrison's founders, all passed in silence. Bob didn't stop until he reached the little park by the river. The benches were dusted with frost, and the water moved slow and dark beneath a thin sheet of forming ice. He sat. There were no profound thoughts, no grand plans, just the hum of traffic in the distance and the occasional bark of a dog far off in the neighborhood. Bob wasn't angry. He was tired, and somewhere beneath that tiredness was a slow-burning clarity, not about money or housing or even fairness, but about what he'd allowed. He'd let his presence shrink in their home, let his worth be measured in dollars instead of decades, let a $5 insult be tossed at him like a bone to a stray. He smiled at the absurdity of it all. 3 tickets, 3 chances, 1 name would change a life, and if it happened to be his, he wouldn't ask for thanks. He'd just leave. He stayed in the park for almost an hour, watching his breath fog and fade. When he finally rose, his legs protested, but he welcomed the discomfort. It reminded him he still had places to go. As he made the slow walk home, the town had quieted. The lights in most windows had dimmed and the wind had dropped to a whisper. He moved like a man untethered, not quite lost, but not quite searching either. Back at the house, the porch light was still on, casting long, thin shadows across the walkway. He opened the door quietly. Inside, Travis was snoring on the couch, a half-finished beer tipping in his hand. The TV blinked with a rerun of some police drama. Bob walked past him without a word. He went upstairs to his small room at the end of the hall. The space smelled of old paper and laundry detergent. He placed his coat over the chair, removed his shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. From his wallet, he pulled out the 3 tickets and placed them neatly in a row on the nightstand. 1 for Lindsay, 2 for himself. 3 chances, no expectations, just a possibility. He turned off the lamp, settled back against the pillow, and stared at the ceiling as the house creaked around him. He slipped the tickets into his wallet and whispered, "Let's see who's really worth something now." The numbers rolled across the screen like fate on parade. It was just past 9 p.m. on a cold Tuesday night, the kind of night where the furnace groaned more than usual and the windows fogged up from the breath of people trying to stay warm, both physically and emotionally. The Callahan living room was dim save for the soft glow of the TV screen. On it, a polished anchor smiled too brightly for the time of night, announcing the Powerball draw in a chipper voice that felt almost mocking. Travis sat up on the couch legs, jittering. All right, shush, it's starting." Lindsay perched on the edge of the recliner, the 3 lottery tickets spread out neatly on the coffee table. She had arranged them like artifacts, as if their placement would somehow increase their chances. Bob stood behind them, leaning on the doorway with a cup of lukewarm tea. He hadn't said much all evening. He didn't have to. The house was louder than usual, with Travis's anticipation and Lindsay's false optimism filling every inch of air. "It's like free money," Travis said, cracking his knuckles. "You just gotta be in the room when lightning strikes." "Lightning strikes rich neighborhoods," Lindsay replied dryly, but her eyes stayed locked on the screen. Bob's eyes, however, were on her. He watched the way she bit her lower lip the same way she used to when she was 8 and trying to lie about stealing cookies. He saw the tension in her shoulders, the slight shake in her fingers. It wasn't just about winning, it was about escaping. "Okay, here we go." The announcer said, the background music swelling with faux suspense. A machine swirled brightly colored balls like candy in a giant glass bowl. The first number dropped. 7, Travis shouted before the announcer could even say it. "I knew it. That's on mine." Lindsay checked the tickets quickly. "It's on this one, my name." She lifted it, lips curling slightly. "Good start." Bob sipped his tea, silent. The second ball dropped. 23. Boom. Travis fist pumped the air. "I'm telling you, this is it." Lindsay's eyes darted. "Still good. Still on mine." Bob walked in and placed his cup on the end table, then sat quietly in the corner chair, hands clasped. He didn't reach for the tickets. He didn't need to. Third number 31, Lindsay gasped. Still matching Travis's jaw dropped. "No way." Bob's eyes didn't move from the screen, but his heart had started a slow, deliberate beat. Not fast, just firm. Next up, 42. Lindsay's hands were shaking now. "That's 4. Are you kidding me?" Travis stood. "Are we on some prank show? The 5th ball." 58. Lindsay's mouth opened, but no words came out. Travis took a few steps back, his hands on his head. This is happening." Bob leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "One more." Lindsay turned toward him, her eyes wide. "If this last one hits..." The announcer paused dramatically. "And tonight's Powerball is..." 12. Silence. Dead, holy silence. Then, "Oh my God!" Lindsay screamed, leaping to her feet. "Oh my God, we won!" Travis whooped, spinning in a circle. "We're rich, holy hell, we're rich!" The ticket fluttered from Lindsay's hand as she ran around the room, shrieking. Travis grabbed it, midair, kissed it, then nearly tripped over the ottoman. "We need champagne," Lindsay shouted. "Wait, who sells champagne at this hour? We're going to need a lawyer, an accountant, a whole team." Travis was pacing. We're moving out of this dump. They laughed and shouted, danced and cursed, all in the same breath. The moment was manic raw, unfiltered joy from people who hadn't had much of it in years. Bob didn't move. He let them have their celebration, let them dream just a few moments longer. Then he stood up slowly. Lindsay rushed to hug him. "Dad, you were right. You bought the ticket. Your karma's come through. We'll take care of you forever, okay? We'll fix everything." She pulled back and looked into his eyes. That's when she saw it. The calm, the stillness, the certainty. "Which ticket was it?" Bob asked quietly. Travis held it up proudly. "This one, obviously. Lindsay's name." She read the numbers she matched. Bob extended his hand. "May I?" Travis blinked. "Yeah, sure, of course." Bob took the slip, turned it slowly, and then he turned it around for them to see. Printed neatly at the bottom, Robert Callahan. The room froze. Lindsay stepped forward. "Wait, no, that's not... That can't be..." Travis snatched the ticket, flipped it again, scanned every inch. No way. This was on the $5 one. This was Lindsay's." Bob shook his head. "No, the $5 ticket had her name. I bought that 1 second. This one was one of mine." Lindsay's voice cracked. "But I was holding it. I read it. That has to mean something. It means the numbers matched," Bob said. "And the name on it is mine." Travis's face twisted. "Come on, Bob. Don't be petty. We're family." Bob looked down at the slip, then back up. "Were we..." The question cut deeper than any accusation. Lindsay's hands trembled. "You're going to keep all of it." "I haven't decided," Bob replied. "I didn't come down here to argue. I just wanted to see your faces." He walked to the coffee table and gently placed the winning ticket back on the wood. Lindsay moved toward him. "Dad, please. We were celebrating you. This is for all of us." Bob gave a sad smile. "It was never about the money, Lindsay." Travis's voice hardened. "You can't just walk away with that. That's not fair." Bob picked up his empty teacup and turned toward the hallway. "Fair. Such a loaded word in this house." Her face drained of all color. "Dad, this says your name." "This can't be right," Lindsay whispered, staring at the name like it was written in fire. "This says Robert Callahan." She was frozen, ticket in hand, her world shifting beneath her feet. Just minutes ago, that slip of paper had been the key to salvation, the golden ticket. Now it was something else, something dangerous. Travis took the ticket again, squinting at the fine print like it might shift under pressure. No, you made a mistake. I saw you buy it. That was the one with Lindsay's name." Bob, standing quietly near the kitchen doorway, folded his arms. "No, that one was the second ticket, $5. This one," he nodded toward the winning slip, "was mine, but I was holding it." Lindsay snapped. "I read the numbers. I matched them." Bob looked at her calmly. "Holding it doesn't make it yours." Travis stepped forward, voice rising. "We've been struggling. Scraping by for years. You really gonna hoard it all, Bob?" "After everything," Bob's jaw tightened. "Everything? You mean the house I helped pay for? The meals I quietly skipped so I wouldn't run up the grocery bill? The times you muttered 'old man' under your breath when you thought I wasn't listening?" Silence. Only the hum of the fridge filled the air now. Lindsay's eyes welled with something, not quite tears, but something close. "You don't know how hard it's been. You think we like treating you like a burden?" Bob gave a faint, sad smile. "You didn't treat me like a burden, Lindsay. You made me one." Travis threw his hands up. "So what? You gonna cash the check, pack your bags, and vanish into the sunset? Just leave us with nothing?" Bob took a step forward. "Let me make this clear. I didn't win to punish you. I bought that ticket because I was curious what it felt like to matter again, to see if life had one more surprise left for me." He reached into his wallet and pulled out the other 2 tickets, placing them gently on the coffee table. "Here," he said, voice even. "One of these is yours, Lindsay. You can keep it, frame it, burn it, doesn't matter." Lindsay stared at the losing ticket like it had betrayed her. Travis, fuming, paced the room. "You know what? This is theft. You used her money." Bob looked him dead in the eye. "It was $5. You want me to give it back?" Travis hesitated. "That's not the point." "No," Bob said. "The point is, when you thought the ticket was hers, you were ready to spend every cent without asking me. Now that it's mine, suddenly it's a moral issue." Lindsay moved closer, her voice dropping to something almost pleading. "Dad, please, think about what this could do for all of us. A fresh start, together." Bob sighed, not angry, not bitter, just done. I did think about that, he said. For 3 years, while I was folding your laundry, fixing your leaky faucet, pretending not to hear you argue about how to get rid of me. The room grew heavier. I gave you money before, he added. It didn't buy me love, it just bought me silence. Travis clenched his fists. Don't talk like you're some kind of martyr. You lived here, ate our food, slept under our roof. Bob's eyes narrowed. A roof I helped buy. A roof you would have lost without my help. Lindsay sank onto the couch, head in her hands. This isn't happening. Bob stepped closer. It is, and I'm leaving. What? She looked up, startled. I'm leaving, he repeated. I've already booked a motel room. I'll figure the rest out later, but I'm not staying here another night. You're just going to walk away. Travis barked. Bob reached into his pocket, pulled out his keys, and set them on the table. There's nothing here for me to stay for. Lindsay stood desperate now. We're family. Bob turned to her, his voice soft but firm. Family doesn't look at you like a bill. Family doesn't throw $5 insults and expect $1 million payout. He picked up the winning ticket from the coffee table and tucked it carefully into his wallet. Then he reached for his coat. Travis blocked the doorway. You're not going anywhere until we talk about this. Bob's voice dropped to a tone no one in that house had ever heard before. Move. Travis hesitated, eyes flickering. Move, Bob repeated. Travis stepped aside. Lindsay followed him to the door. Where will you go? Bob didn't answer right away. He pulled on his gloves, zipped up his coat, and opened the door. The wind rushed in, carrying with it the scent of pine and frost. He turned back to her. You once told me I'd always have a home with you, he said. Tonight, I finally believe that was never true. From the top step, he turned and said, Now you know exactly who I am and what I'm not. The zipper of the old leather suitcase sounded like thunder in the quiet room. Bob's hands moved slowly, deliberately, as he folded a week's worth of clothes and laid them neatly inside the worn suitcase he'd had since 1992. It had seen business trips, family vacations, hospital visits, and most recently years collecting dust in the back of a closet he no longer felt welcome to open. The room was still. Too still. Downstairs, the TV murmured softly. A weather forecast played warning of flurries overnight. Appropriate, Bob thought. One last snow before everything changed. He placed his shaving kit beside the folded shirts, then paused, eyes resting on the framed photo of Margaret on the nightstand. She was smiling, standing barefoot in the garden behind their old house, hands full of tomatoes and sunlight. Bob picked it up, gently traced her face with his thumb. They're still your daughter, he said quietly to the photo, but I'm not sure they're mine anymore. The hallway creaked outside his door. A second later, a soft knock. Dad, Lindsay. Bob didn't answer immediately. He closed the suitcase, zipped it shut, and then walked over and opened the door. She stood in her bathrobe, hair tied back, eyes red and tired. You're really going? Bob nodded. I said I would. She looked past him at the suitcase, the empty bed, the bare nightstand. I thought, maybe you'd cool off. Bob gave a small smile. I'm not angry, Lindsay. That's what makes it worse, she whispered. There was a long pause. I didn't mean for it to get like this, she said, voice cracking. I was just overwhelmed, tired. Travis, he says things and sometimes I believe them when I shouldn't. Bob didn't reply. He just waited. You helped us, she said, stepping into the room. You saved us back when we needed it. I never said thank you properly. No, Bob agreed. You didn't, she bit her lip. But that doesn't mean we didn't care. Bob raised an eyebrow. Does it? She dropped her gaze. I remember he said when you were 10 and you broke your arm falling off the swing. You cried the whole way to the hospital, but you never blamed the swing. You blamed yourself. You said, I should have known better. Lindsay looked up confused. Bob continued, I've blamed myself too, for letting it all happen, for shrinking myself to fit into a corner of your life. That's not fair. No, Bob said, but it's true. She moved closer. You don't have to leave. We can figure this out. Split the money. Start over. Bob shook his head. I don't want to start over. I want to start. Downstairs, Travis called up. Is he packed yet? Bob stepped past Lindsay and into the hallway. Tell him yes. Lindsay followed him down the stairs. Please, Dad, let's just talk. We've talked, he said. We've lived the talk. At the bottom of the stairs, Travis stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. He wore the same expression he always did, half challenge, half defense. You don't have to be a drama queen, Travis said. Just stay. We'll act like adults. Bob walked past him, suitcase in hand. You don't get to call this dramatic, he said. Not after the things you said last night. Travis rolled his eyes. Fine. Be stubborn. Bob turned. I'm not being stubborn. I'm being free. Lindsay stepped between them. What about holidays? What about family, the kids someday? Bob softened. You'll have holidays. You'll have your own family. But I won't be a cautionary tale at your table. I won't be the old man who couldn't let go. He walked to the door. It was snowing lightly now. Soft flakes drifting down like tiny apologies. Lindsay reached for something, anything. Do you even know where you're going? Bob nodded. A little motel in Glen Arbor, just for a few days. You hate motels, she said. Bob smiled. I hated being invisible more. He opened the door. The wind blew in again, cold but clean. Bob opened the door. Gold trailed in. Travis stood blocking it, then slowly stepped aside. He stepped out onto the porch. Neither of them followed. He paused for a moment, hand on the railing, then looked back. I hope you spend your losing ticket well, he said to Lindsay. It cost you more than $5. As the door closed behind him, Bob whispered, finally free. Bob stood at the picture window of his new home, sunlight warming the quiet hardwood beneath his feet. Outside, Glen Arbor was bathed in the kind of morning light that made the air feel cleaner, newer somehow. The lake shimmered just beyond the trees, still mostly frozen, but cracked in places where spring insisted on arriving early. Inside, everything was quiet. No footsteps overhead, no arguing voices, no dishes clinking in irritation. Just quiet. And it wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. Bob sipped his coffee, real beans fresh ground. None of that instant stuff Travis used to buy, and looked around the open living room. The walls were painted a soft gray, the kind that didn't demand attention. The furniture was simple, new, and entirely his. On the mantel, a photo of Margaret smiled back at him. He'd framed it yesterday. He'd taken her with him in spirit, not in grief. The house had 2 bedrooms, one of which he'd turned into a reading room. It had a recliner, a small bookshelf, and a globe Margaret gave him on their 30th anniversary. She once said, "Pick a spot, Bob. Maybe someday we'll go." He hadn't spun it yet, but he would, soon. The doorbell rang, a soft chime, not the angry buzz of the old house. He opened it to find a woman about his age standing on the porch with a pie in her hands and a cardigan full of cat hair. New neighbor, she asked. Bob smiled. Guilty. I'm Ellen. I live 2 doors down. Welcome to the quiet life. Bob Callahan, he said, shaking her hand. She handed him the pie. Apple. Store-bought crust, my filling. I can't bake from scratch to save my life. I'll survive, he said. She pointed at the lake. Beautiful view. The loons come out around late April. You'll hear them before you see them. I look forward to it. She turned to go, then paused. You're not running from something, are you? He considered. No, just walking toward something. She nodded like she understood exactly. Well, enjoy the pie. Bob Callahan. After she left, he sat at the small kitchen table, cut himself a slice, and ate in silence. It tasted like freedom. Later, he walked to the small cafe in town. It had a chalkboard menu and a teenager at the register who called him Sir and meant it. He ordered a black coffee, no sugar, and sat by the window watching life happen. No one recognized him. No one asked questions. No one expected anything. And that, for now, was perfect. Back at home, he sorted his mail. Just bills and flyers. Nothing from Lindsay. Nothing from Travis. He'd changed his number the day after he left. Not in anger. Just necessity. People who only called when they needed something weren't people you needed to hear from. He sat down with a small notepad and started writing a list. Renew passport. Research Tuscany. Buy real hiking boots. Learn how to cook one fancy dish. Send flowers to Margaret's sister. He underlined the Tuscany one. He spun the globe. His finger landed near Italy. Well, he said aloud. Why not? In the afternoon, he opened the sliding doors and stepped out onto the small deck. The wind carried the scent of thawing pine and melting snow. For a long time, Bob just stood there. No rush, no plan, no pressure. The peace didn't come all at once. It had to be earned. But now, with the quiet lake, the empty road, and the gentle creak of his own house settling into the earth, he finally felt it. 3 years ago, he gave everything to be wanted. Today, he gives nothing and is at peace. He went inside, opened his laptop, and began researching flights to Florence. A message popped up on the corner of the screen. Lindsay is trying to reach you on Messenger. He closed the window. He didn't block her. He just didn't answer. Some silences were kinder than any response. Dinner was simple grilled cheese and tomato soup, but it tasted better than any takeout had in years. Maybe it was the butter, maybe it was the peace. He washed the dishes by hand, dried them, and turned off the lights one by one. Before bed, he sat in the reading room and opened the small leather journal he hadn't touched since Margaret passed. He wrote one line, "You were right. Life doesn't end at goodbye." He smiled, closed the book, and turned off the lamp. Somewhere behind him, an old clock chimed noon. The rest of his life was just beginning. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.